Um, I'm not really certain what I was going to speak to because there was a number of things, but with respect to Uzikee, or Alan Uzikee Nelson, uh, I met him in 1975 because I was a student, I guess, graduating from MICA, Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore. Um, and his wife, current wife, was a student there as well. The so I met him early. I met him a long time ago. He was an artist. He was a professor at UDC at the time, I believe, and I was on my way to Howard for grad school. Um, in moving back to DC, I ended up renting an apartment from him and helping Zeke, work on these buildings. So I learned how to, work on buildings and various other things like that. At the same time, he was working on his sculpture, so I watched him work on his sculpture using Corten steel, which creates this rust patina on the pieces, and he's putting stained glass. So he's been doing that for a while. I traveled with him out of state to help install a sculpture or two. He is very prolific and doing all of this pretty much out of his pocket. So when we see these sculptures, the 4 or 5 around this area in the District of Columbia, this is out of his pocket. He wasn't necessarily getting, government funding and various other things to do this and to brighten up the community with cultural images, aesthetic, and these are very powerful images. I mean, they blend in very natural ways. Even this one behind me has birds living in its eyes, so birds' nests. So, and the natural weathering steel works very well with the environment, so it doesn't have to be patinaed or treated. So Zeke, is a very accomplished artist, but his love of culture, of history, and his willingness to share and give is phenomenal. Most artists either can't afford to or are unwilling to do those types of things. Most artists, if you're going to get a sculpture of theirs in a park or someplace, somebody's going to pay money for something to be done. But Alan Uzikee Nelson saw a need and, gave. So I commend him on that. His dedication of service to the community for decades is unsurpassed. I don't know of any other sculptor who has done that. And there may be others, but I'm just not aware of them. So with respect to that, this particular piece is to Paul Robeson on his 125th anniversary, and that's a phenomenal aspect as well. Paul Robeson, whose father escaped from enslavement, raised his son, and his son was a prolific athlete in colleges in 4 different disciplines. He is valedictorian of his college class. Paul Robeson history is phenomenal in that he stood his ground. This piece, Here I Stand, is apropos in that Paul Robeson stood his ground. He had a baritone voice. He was a brilliant orator, brilliant singer, brilliant athlete, but they penalized him for being outspoken against the race issues, even about injustices. And they literally took away his ability to sing legally. He could not support his family. He went from $150,000 a year salary down to less than $3,000 a year with a family to support. But he endured that. He continued his resistance, if you would, his mission, and he was undaunted. So one of his famous quotes is, I will not retreat, not 1,000th of an inch. And that's what I believe this piece, Here I Stand, is representing. You know, you could twist his body, you could do these other things, but, his spirit, his legacy, his integrity would be undaunted. So this is a phenomenal piece by a phenomenal artist in a phenomenal place and time. So that's all I can say.